Alexis Ohanian, I could call you lots of different titles and whatnot, but now I just have to call you author because you were silly enough to write a book. So, without their permission, which, by the way, great job not having those words on the cover. So, I am forever going, don't penis the power on. Don't penis the power on is this great new book by Alexis Ohanian, who founded a lot of things like Bread Pig and Hitmonk and Reddit and all that. Don't penis the power on is kind of your behind the scenes of all your business smarts and things like that. Is that a nice way to say
It
it?
is. It is. That is. How did you know the alternate title?
Uh, you know, I have to tell you, it's enough slash WTF and you can do anything.
Uh,
There's a lot of storytelling in here. I got the great opportunity to hang out with you and a princess and one of the co-founders of Twitter the other day, a year ago, and you tell stories. Your way of imparting wisdom is here's the story, and the moral of the story, young Jimmy, is this. This model works rather well for this book. How did it feel to you to get it out? And did this flow easy, or were you just like, why the hell did I say yes to this? How did that go for you?
when I first, oh man, I first got approached to do a book after the Splashy Pants TED Talk a little while back, and went through the process, got an agent, and then maybe a month after signing, then proceeded to join Steve and Adam in launching Hitmonk. So I took about a year off focusing on that, and then came back to the book. It was not anything that happened naturally. I mean, I it was, I was doing this in the midst of doing, like, while we were doing the whole fight against Soap and Pippa, like, I would sneak off for half an hour to just be writing and trying to catch my thoughts. But I'll tell you, I wanted to be very thoughtful of my readers' time, and so I just wanted to have something that they could easily read, get motivated by, maybe learn something from, and then put down and go do stuff.
So in that process, though, I mean, for instance, your publishing venture that launched, and you started making a choose your own adventure book and things like that. I really came to learn about some people that I had not in any other way known about. But then also I came to sort of get backstory on people I'd seen you mention and whatnot. And there is a little bit of inclusion of friends sort of storyline, which is how I write all my books. Like, I stuff them full of everybody I know. How did that feel for you? Was there ever any kind of a situation where you felt like someone was going to be totally down for this and they were like, I don't want to be in your dumb book? Or how'd that go?
I just lucked out, I guess, or all of the friends who I chose were just, yeah, for whatever reason, really interested. It's well, I've been lucky because I've gotten to work with, and I've gotten to know, and I've gotten to become friends with some really successful people in their field. Whether it's some of the top webcomic artists in the world, literally read by millions of people every day, to entertainers and musicians, and I deliberately wanted to cherry pick a bunch of different ones who represented sort of different backgrounds, different approaches, and also different stages. Because the one thing that I can't stress enough is that we are still so early on into this. We know, we're seeing the advancements certainly on the tech side and startup side, but we're just starting to see what happens with, millions of people connected online almost all the time, sharing and actively buying and trading, doing all the stuff that they're doing, and how that's going to affect all these other industries. Whether it's education, whether it's philanthropy or art, music, film, and it's like I don't have any false notion that I actually have a crystal ball. Trust me, if I did, I wouldn't have written a book. I would have just gone to Vegas. But I know that there are clear trends here, and it's one thing for me to talk about it abstractly. It's another thing to just tell the story of someone else who's doing it and use their voice.
It was interesting to sort of, how careers are never what we, especially nowadays, they're never, it's not like you intend to do X and then there's Y and, oh, hey, look, Z comes. It's interesting to watch this sort of progression of you, though, because you build a bunch of things. One of them gets huge. It gets so huge that you don't have to like fake it and make your own comments and post on it. And then other things, take off to different levels and different extents. And along the way, you then go from guy who makes things to guy who stands next to other people making things and kind of has to start doing a mentor role, which my guess is you started at this one level where you were like, well, here's kind of how I did it and whatever. And then you start having to learn this like real mentorship role. Like, here's how I can, say it without saying it. And here's how I can kind of gently put you there. then in the whole progression of your life too, you then go off to politics in that world and explain to them, why we need to stop things like SOPA and all that. And then you end this book with sort of my notes for the graduating class. This Alexis Ohanian as Yoda progression here. How has that been?
Shorter and shorter. My force power is, you should see me back on Dagobah, dude. I doing all kinds of things. I mean, wow, I hadn't really. This is. I feel like I should be like paying you for this, like some kind of therapy session. I mean, you're right. It is. I'll tell you, it is much easier to just be someone who advises, who mentors, who invests in startups and just amazing people, than it is to take on trying to start something. And it is a role I'm very comfortable in, especially because ultimately, and I've thought a lot about this in the last few years, and the big impetus for writing the book and a lot of the stuff that I've done politically and just with whatever platform I have, has been to spread these ideas and motivate as many people as I can, basically to scale myself. Because Steve and I were really fortunate that Reddit, we graduated from college and started a startup, and it actually turned out to be pretty successful. The odds of that are insanely bad. Like, we should have just gone to Vegas with the luck that we had. But it worked out, and in a lot of ways, I think, all right, well, I could invest myself as wholly to some other new startup thing. But what are the returns going to be compared to what I can do right now, which has a much higher success rate? And that is spreading these ideas, using the platform that I've already built to just keep pushing forward this stuff. Because look, and I say as much in the book, like, I love getting tweets from people who tell me, like, I started learning how to code today because I saw an episode of Small Empires, or I was finally motivated to launch because of something I read. Like, that's great. And I want to know that because I want to take all the credit for that. Like, I want to be able to, but in all seriousness, it provides so much value to me to know that I could play a small role, and I'm not that much credit for it, but some small role in helping this stuff, because there's a lot riding on it. There's a lot riding on it, and the potential, if we get it right, is so huge. There's so much upside, if we can have the internet live up to its full potential.
You were kind enough to inscribe this book, saying that hopefully you dig this book because you're living it after all, and I'll own that. But when I thought about this, I also was thinking about your other stuff, like Small Empires. When we were kids, it might have been, boy, I really hope the mainstream finds me, or I really hope I get a chance to be on TV like I always wanted to be. And now it's really, if you know a friend with a camera, you could get that one going right now. I mean, you can just walk it with your iPhone in front of your arm if you want. There's, my God, you look at the top subscribed people on YouTube, and, guys like PewDiePie, who are essentially playing video games and we just get to watch them.
Yeah.
Making your own empire and entertaining is a really important piece of this book. And so understanding where you came from with that, I mean, what do you tell some of your little Y Combinator friends and all that? I mean, how do you start? Because sometimes it's hard to tell people, what you need is to type a lot of crap and make a lot of photos and shoot a lot of video, because, boy, you've just got to spew yourself out to the world. They're like, that's narcissistic. And you go, right. And you know what else you need to do? What's your spot on that?
Oh man, I carry, we grew up in the middle of all this. We carry with us our own baggage from being in a world where, right, TV still has a lot of value for us because we grew up with, a handful of nightly news stations that we watched at 6, I guess, or, that like that we have our own biases that I even catch myself. I mean, for a year and a half, I was pitching this to traditional networks, and they all said the same thing. They were like, we love you, we totally want to do a show with you, but it's going to have to be a little different if we're going to sell it to, network X or network Y. And then I was like, God, you idiot, like, just go on the internet, like, what are you thinking? And what, one of the big reasons why I'm so jealous of the generation coming up is they aren't encumbered by these same biases, and that, yeah, some little girl in Des Moines can get up one morning and be like, you know what, I'm going to turn on my webcam and talk about what I want to do today. And yeah, it's a lot of it. I'm sure a lot of it's going to be pretty inane, pretty silly. But one day she might start talking about something that she finds she's really passionate about. And maybe it's Maybe it's My Little Pony. Maybe it's Crisis in Syria. Like, I don't know. But she is going to build an audience over time. And over time, this audience is going to come up with her. And you know, uh, you can make, I can pretty safely say that anyone who has a career today in entertainment, however you want to call it, would have been taking selfies on Instagram 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 40 years ago if it had existed. And so I don't really, I don't buy a ton of that. And in fact, it's exciting for me because even for the silly stuff, even for, the next sort of pop culture icon, but one that is not Justin Bieber, one that is truly really kind of brought up with the internet. They are, he or she is going to have a very different perception of celebrity because they will remember when they put up that first YouTube channel or their first Twitter account with their 3 followers, and they remember the first time someone said, some random stranger on the internet was like, cool video. And they are going to have to be brought up. It's not as though, and it'll still happen because there are still these gatekeepers who still have a tremendous amount of power, but you're going to start to see, Todrick Hall is one of my favorites, who's like, he's putting out this amazing high quality video content. And now of course he's been tapped by Scooter and we'll see where that career goes. But like, we're going to start to see, I think, even a more organic type of celebrity. And they may not reach, Rihanna scale, but they may and very likely will reach like a sustainable scale where they can do their art, whether it's being a comedian or whether it's making music and actually make a living from it because there's no middleman in there. And that's really cool. And, Kickstarter is the canonical example now that it's funding. I think it's funding more projects than the entire National Endowment for the Arts. Like, it didn't exist 4 years ago. And all I know is this is part of a much bigger trend. And like, look, art is an easy one to pick on because the industry has historically been so broken, whether it's, the example of Lester Chambers in the book, which is a big extreme, or even the more like subtle ones, just the fact that like, the economics of it don't make sense in a world where distribution, the one thing these companies were supposed to do, like turn your music into a record and get it into the homes of everyone in the country. Like when that is trivial, it's time to adapt your business model. And unfortunately, they decided instead to go to Washington, but that's a whole other story.
Wow, that's interview 5.
Dude, I got that soapbox. It's right under the table.
Tell you, at the time, it's funny, there's a few things going through my head at the same time as of parts of the book that I read. And one was that just a little while ago, by the way, via Instagram, I follow Jim Long, who works for NBC, and he's a camera guy, and he walks backwards in front of the president most days. And so he was at this thing where the president was going around as fast as he could and as far around as he could saying, holy crap, college is really still affordable. You should totally buy some of that college stuff. It's good. And I was thinking, wow, when you've got to get the head of a country to go around and explain to people why this college thing might still be a good idea, there's one to think about. And I'm going to just tie that directly to, I only watched about the first 8 minutes of the Emmys by mistake because I had been watching football and I was like, who's that Neil Patrick Harris chap, bothering? And I only paid attention at the moment where Kevin Spacey turned around and did part of his House of Cards bit.
Yeah.
So my only point being with this is that House of Cards, got its first of Emmys. It deserved a lot more Emmys. But all of a sudden, Netflix is suddenly being seen as viable in lieu of HBO, for instance. This world that's now said you can do this a lot of different ways. And this world where a U.S. president has to go, oh, no, college is good. Keep, please, coming to college. What's your stance on, you were writing to the class of 2025, and I see some of this here, and we don't want to give away the last best chapter, but what's part of the stance?
Wow. Well, here is and I'm not, there's certainly folks like Peter Thiel who have made headlines by saying, like, just forget it, college is lame, it's broken, kids don't need it, just become a Thiel fellow. And look, those kids are probably going to be fine regardless. But it's great that Peter's got this thing set up. A real education solution actually educates everyone. And the reality there is, the cost of tuition continues to go up regardless of anything else every year. And in fact, the folks over at Priceonomics have done they just published part 2 of just a fabulous data analysis of the last few decades. And, with that comes more student loan debt. And those rates have just recently doubled because apparently Congress doesn't want to do anything. What is so clear is that we have a system, and I'm not the first person. You can watch any Ken Robinson TED talk about this. But like, what is clear to me is at least that, as an entrepreneur, or just I guess more broadly being entrepreneurial, which is the thing that's not just for great founders but like great employees, is not part of any of this. And what I mean is, for all of our education, we are taught not to fail. We are taught to do exactly as we're told, to pass that test to get to the next grade, pass those tests, next grade, and so on and so forth. And so most of us, myself included, come out without having really experienced failure. If we're one of the successful kids, we've never actually experienced true failure. And so when you apply to Y Combinator and you get rejected for the first time in your life for something that you really think you kind of deserve, you get drunk and it hurts. And we're the generation that got a trophy for everything. And so a part of this solution, and the reason why I'm going to 75 universities now this fall, is that the good news is the internet enables so much and so many opportunities to learn and fail without permission, right? Whether it's, even comparing back to 2005 when we started Reddit, the amount of knowledge that is there that has improved, not just for founders of companies, but people who want to learn how to knit, or people who want to make and sell jewelry, or people who want to, edit films and share them with the world. The platforms have grown phenomenally since, and there are more to come. And it's not part of any curriculum I have seen. And so, even for the history majors out there like me, like, there have to be, we have to have these opportunities to just try to create whether it's starting a blog and just picking a cute cat photo every day, whether it's launching your first Kickstarter campaign for $500, just to take an idea, bring it to fruition, and learn how to learn using the internet. These are the things that are going to matter in the resumes of the future, because more and more employers are going to have more and more history majors to choose from. We're all going to kind of look the same. And unless you actually have something to show that you have done, what you have done, getting things done is what's going to matter more than you're ending up, your GPA, or in a lot of cases, unfortunately, your major. And so it's like, here is this huge shift, and the education system has not quite caught up. And in the meantime, you've got plenty of upstarts letting people learn how to code from their browser, or from sort of meet space kinds of meetups on campuses that are being developed now. And it's an exciting time, right? Because you get these New York Times stories like 2 weeks ago of the kid at Ulaanbaatar who's taking MIT classes from Mongolia. And like, that's amazing. Here is a genius. Here is an incredible talent that would have languished probably, barring some amazing serendipity, would have languished in a pre-internet world. And he is just one example of what we need, because there are still far too many who are languishing. He's just one example of the potential. And a real solution is one that actually, like I said, serves everyone. But we're still far from it.
In a weird way, so I've often called Twitter the serendipity engine, because really that's one of the best things it does, is you just randomly see something, you go, and you take an action. But I think that, Reddit couldn't be more serendipitous. There couldn't be a larger unit of serendipity. And I was thinking two things about this. One was, if you had told me, your plan, and I think actually the first time I met you, you told me something about it, and I was like, oh, that's not going to work.
Guys,
that's way too vague.
Doesn't he know about Dig?
Yeah, it's going to be everything. It's going to just be everything. And who wants a site about everything? And, that, by the way, take none of my future planning advice, because that's how I always think, is the opposite of what wins.
Experts don't know jack, myself.
No question. So, you have this wild serendipity engine that spits out things that are ridiculously unpredictable. On any one day of Reddit life, this thing happens. So now Alexis Ohanian does these other kinds of projects that are a lot more deliberate and discreet and whatever. Is this your version of escaping your child actor syndrome? Is this what you do to sort of, appreciate but move on past what you started?
Maybe. I had the opportunity to come back to Reddit after it was spun out and be CEO and do all that again. But part of it, frankly, was I didn't want to move back to San Francisco. I really like living in New York. I really like being on the East Coast. But a bigger thing was I felt like I don't know. I felt like I'd still be helpful, and as a board member, I feel like I can be helpful as a kind of mouthpiece at times. I can be helpful, but I don't know. I just felt like in a lot of ways it was time for me to figure out something else. And I'm still obviously an active. I mean, you see me on Reddit every day. But there is, I don't know. There like I said, there's a part of me that just wanted to see. I mean, even launching Hitmark was a chance to do something different. Was a chance to do something that was like travel search is a totally antisocial behavior in an industry that is not really big fans of innovation. That was a whole nother challenge, and that was fun. Though, as I look ahead, yeah, it is a little bit more deliberate. It's a little bit more deliberate, but I'll tell you, I am still taking my cue from a lot of the stuff that is just going on around me. I still take a lot of the when folks are. And it's always weird when it's politicians are asking like how whatever you do, don't push that button, the Reddit button again, to make them all upset. And it's like that's the thing. See, there's no lever, there's no switch. The sort of most astute of us are just looking for that wave and are trying to ride it. We are riding on the coattails of that, and that's how I felt with a lot of this stuff. And if I can be good at sort of spotting that wave, if I can really tease this metaphor out a little bit earlier, then I'm gonna use what I have to jump on it and hope that it puts us in the right direction. I don't know. This is why I'm not a surfer.
Yeah, my friend Srini Rao from Blogcast FM is, and he uses those analogies all the time, and I just always like, yeah, and I don't never know what he means, but I always am like, but I respect your culture, Srini.
Exactly. All the surfers watching this are just like, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, that's the worst feeling. Speaking of those kinds of feelings, though, you wrote in your interview with Tim Ferriss not too long back, it's sort of I was the big fat weird kid and no one loved me kind of a feeling.
Well, my parents loved me.
Well, of course they did.
My Quake 2 clan members liked me.
Quake 2, oh my gosh.
Damage Incorporated, shout out.
Back in the day, I used to play that so often that I would sort of I'd have like fake PTSD for part of a day. Because you play all night and you sort of darken your room and you play a good chunk of the day and you see pixels where you shouldn't. Yeah, you're dodging things in real life. So, I mean, you never exactly shed your nerdiness, but one of the things that, like in your chapter, for instance, on your political experience, you talked about those sort of moments where, I would say that perceptions. We're sort of like, oh, well, this is one of those internet fellows. And you've had to figure out some ways to kind of interface, I guess is where I'm going with this question. Mm-hmm. How has Alexis Ohanian evolved? And understanding that you're still true to who you really are, but you've learned some new ways to sort of present this layer, I guess.
Oh, well, I mean, look, this is a fact. The biggest challenge that we have is what seems very obvious to people who understand the technology is not obvious to people who don't understand the technology. And that is the thing that we as in all of us who are sort of fighting for the open internet, deal with. And so it's a particular thing. There are so many other industries where I think a politician is totally comfortable sort of respecting his or her ignorance. Like they're willing to concede that they want to learn, they're ready to learn. Technology is a weird thing, and you can see this on the floor of the House during a lot of the Sopa Pippa stuff. There were people who were so prideful about how ignorant they were about technology, saying, "Oh, I'm not a technology guy, but we got to pass this bill anyway." And I mean, it's shocking how boastful they can be. And I don't know if it's like a jock nerd thing. The point is, we have to be able to explain this stuff in a concise way that my dad my dad, my girlfriend, those are my two sounding boards because they're both smart people, but they are not technologists. And if I can explain it in a way that works for them, then I'm on the right track. But look, the big shock for me was the first time I did a debate on TV. because it's not a debate. It is yelling, and you have what experience I have had with live TV. You still only have small, you have a few seconds to make a good soundbite, and that's all that really matters. But when you throw the debate format into it, then it just gets crazy, because now you don't even have to. I mean, fuck citations. You're not even trying to reference it. You were yelling in the most effective, concise way possible. That's the game plan. And it's an appalling way to have a discussion about anything that is important, and yet it is what fills up most people's brains when it comes to discussing politics or policy. So, oh man, I am ready for the internet to disrupt that one. But for the time being, this is still where much of that discussion happens. And also for anyone, for the people just listening to the audio, I am making frantic large air quotes, just to be clear.
Oh, they see them. Don't worry. They see.
I just want to make sure in case they're tapped into another window. And
no, it's good. I think that's really smart. Yeah, the last thing you want to do is be misquoted by someone who's out on a jog.
This guy.
Ohanian, I'm going to smash into a tree now. The book is without their permission. It is really, without a doubt, the whole kind of... it's probably the first good swipe at an owner's manual for what's going to come next. So...
thank you.
Thank you ridiculously much. You have some kind of goofy book website. What's that called again? What's that URL?
Withouttheirpermission.com.
Well, that's too easy. Come on now.
Yeah.
All right. Alexis Ohanian, thank you so vitally much.
Dude, Chris, thank you so much.